All right, back with you live on Daily Wager, and we are counting down to actual games a week from Thursday. The NFL regular season opens, and to help get you prepared, we thought we'd talk about some personal keys to success, at least mindset guidelines when approaching NFL betting, because it's widely considered the tightest market in the world come Sunday morning, that those numbers are as tight as possible. So I say, and this is talking to pro bettors and things like that, September has, in theory, the most opportunity because as the season goes on, all the data gets put in, and then the tighter the market even so. So if you trust your analysis or your numbers or what you think going into the season, there's opportunity there. Like we did well last week in college, right? We just kind of saw the ball well. That's something to keep in mind, but you don't have to necessarily fire away in September. Now, the market knows what's up, but don't let that influence you too much. So when there's an injury, you're not the only person who knows that. The market has adjusted for it. Now, the question is, do you disagree with how much the impact, good or bad? So I always say this, odds makers want both teams at full strength, and teams we know, Cowboys, Eagles, full strength, Sunday night, put the three out there and let them fire away and they'll clean up the juice. When there's moving parts, a quarterback that's got a nagging injury or a demotion or a new guy or Trey Lance comes in mid-game, when there's all these moving parts, odds makers don't like that as much. They want everything on the table. So there are opportunities. Last year, I know we were all big on the Lions when facing the Steelers because, yes, the odds makers knew Mason Rudolph was going to start instead of Big Ben, but we thought he stunk, and we thought that had it adjusted enough, and of course the Lions tied that game and won with the coverage with the point spread. So it's okay to challenge the market, but just don't think you're the only one who knows the information. Just trust the market, respect it, but don't be afraid to challenge it.
I always like keeping an eye on what happened the week before with the look-aheads, and then to see the adjustments that are made that Sunday based on that one game of action. One I'll throw out there as a case in point. Remember what happened to Green Bay in Week 1 last year in that neutral site game against New Orleans? Throttled. So the next week, everyone's thinking, well, Detroit was kind of competitive at the end against the Niners. Maybe something's wrong with Rodgers and the Packers. They covered an 11.5, no problem. Probably should have been closer to 2 touchdowns there that game.
Something as well. All right, let's bring in Aaron Dolan. Aaron, what's your approach to betting totals? Obviously, there's so much nuance and everything's involved. Let's focus on totals here, particularly early in the season.
For totals, there's so many ways you could slice it. You could isolate it to one team, focus on that total. You could look at the first half total. There's so many different ways you can do this. I know, Doug, you talked about September being a great time for value. For me personally, I like to kind of wait the first couple of weeks, really deep dive into some of the data of how these teams are playing. It's important to look, does this offense start out firing? The Tennessee Titans, for example, the first couple of weeks of the season last year, they were great in that first half. They were able to cover the number typically. So I like to kind of try to find those edges. But again, I really like to wait a few weeks with these totals to really deep dive into how these teams are playing and try to find the advantage a little bit later in terms of the totals.
Totally understandable. Since legalization 3.5 years ago, there's been sort of a gold rush for gaming operators and also bettors, and they've really had to offer expansive menus for bettors, and that means more props. And that's sometimes vulnerability. So I know there's props in-game, or excuse me, single-game props. There's also props for season long.
And attacking both, you can take this macro or this kind of like overarching approach. I think you want to, in NFL or in football, default to under season long in game because football's a violent sport and any one hit can take you out and remove your opportunity to accumulate stats. I was talking about this as well. Look at opportunity and efficiency with Najee Harris earlier. I think his opportunity is going to take a hit because of the quarterback change. I think his efficiency could take a hit because of his injury. And that leads me to stay with the default of under. The inverse, I'm very bullish on Allen Robinson, not just because he's a Ram, but I think his season-long props and in-game props are going to be a little lower because he just had an awful year with the Bears. But look at his opportunity and efficiency. Opportunity boost big time going to the Rams, who are one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. And his efficiency boost should be big time catching passes from Matt Stafford as opposed to Justin Fields and Sean McVay's offense. So there's the inverse. Look at opportunity and efficiency, whether it's season-long or game, and measure whether or not that positive boost can override the default of an under.
Interesting. All right, we've talked about teasers a lot on this show. So much they were so successful that the books have changed the odds. Literally, they're like, all right, you guys went too much. But there's some that are like minus 140, but some books not so much. What are some strategies for teasers in your eyes?
Play them. Just play them. There's so many of them in Week 1. 2 key guidelines that I like to use when playing 6-point teasers. Number one, this is all a numbers game. It really doesn't matter who the jerseys are, who the teams are. It's a numbers game. You want to tease through as many key numbers as possible. So what are key numbers? 3, 4, 7. Those are some right out of the gate. 6, 14, and 10. Get through as many as you possibly can to maximize your value. For example, the Indianapolis Colts are an 8-point favorite in Week 1 at Houston. You tease them down 6 points, you're going through 3, you're going through 4, you're going through 7, you're going through 6. That's a great teaser. You're laying 2. Conversely, you can look at Minnesota. They're catching 2 against Green Bay. Tease them up. That goes up to 8. You go through 3, 4, 6, 7, all the way to 8. That's how you maximize the value. The other guideline, don't ever tease through 0. You're getting no value, no bang for your buck. But instead of looking at it as 6 points, look at it as 12 half points that you're getting, right? You know how many half points you throw away going through 0? 0, because how many games actually end in a tie? Minus a half, plus a half. You're throwing away.
And even the ones if ties lose.
Exactly. There are so many half points you're throwing away going through 0. Get through as many key numbers as possible. Avoid the zeros. You're going to set yourself up long-term for success.
And we'll touch more on this, but that bar graph they showed was the most common margins of victory in the NFL since the extra point moved back. And that's where we get the concept of key numbers, the most common margins of victory. So you want to take those out of play because going from 16 to 10 is very different than 8 to 2.
Right.
That's the concept. So if you're going to lay juice, even with a teaser, and have to win multiple legs, do it through numbers where the math is on your side. To your point, it's a numbers game where the most common margins of victory are taken out of play because we know prevent defense and all the stuff at the end of games. Teams aren't trying to cover, they're trying to just win. You want to be in that strike zone, so to speak.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.